Ever get that feeling, that like eerie sense
Yeah.
that someone somewhere somehow predicted the future?
Yeah, definitely. Gets you thinking.
Well, today we're diving into the work of Marshall McLuhan.
Oh,
He
interesting.
was a Canadian philosopher, and he kind of did just that, predicted the future.
Okay.
We're talking about the internet, but not of the way you might think.
Right.
He actually called it the global village
Oh, wow.
back in the 1960s.
In the 60s, he was ahead of his time.
Let me tell you, this guy was onto something.
What's so remarkable about McLuhan is that it's not like he was just taking random guesses, He didn't just pull this out of thin air.
Right.
He was really tuned in to how the media, how it shapes us.
Yep.
Like our thoughts, how societies work, even the way we see the world around us. He was looking at the same technology as everyone else back then, but he was seeing something totally different.
Okay, so how did he do that?
Yeah.
What was he seeing that everyone else was missing? It's not like he had a crystal ball or something.
Not a crystal ball, no. But he had this framework for understanding media.
Okay.
And it was, honestly, light years ahead of its time.
Wow.
McLuhan argued that each new medium, every single one, it extends our senses.
Okay.
And that then changes our relationship to the world.
Interesting.
Take the printing press, for example. It created this whole mass audience for the written word.
Right.
Changed everything, how we thought, learned, even how society was organized.
So he was looking at the patterns,
Exactly.
the ripple effects of technologies, but throughout history.
Yes. And he used those patterns, to understand electronic media.
Yeah.
Things like radio, television, even what he called the electric information environment.
Hmm.
To him, it was completely different.
Okay.
He saw it weaving us together in ways that, had never been seen before.
Hence the global village.
Exactly. He wasn't just predicting a world with, more gadgets.
Right.
He was talking about the breakdown of boundaries.
Okay, so let's unpack this global village idea a bit.
Yeah.
Because it's way more than just everyone having a smartphone. Right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's a fundamental shift, I think.
Absolutely. It was about breaking down traditional boundaries, geography, culture, you name it.
Yeah.
He saw a future where information traveled at the speed of light, connecting people across continents like that. Sound familiar?
He's basically describing the internet years before it even existed.
It's incredible, isn't it?
That's just wild. This wasn't just some vague prediction either.
Right.
I was reading through documento.txt, and he specifically says, and this is a quote, he says, "The planet has become an electronic brain."
That's the part that blows my mind every time I read it. He understood this interconnectedness would change how we actually experience the world. Imagine in the 1960s talking about the planet itself becoming this interconnected web of information.
Right.
He was talking about the internet before the technology even existed.
It's like he could see the Matrix or something. But why was he so sure? Why was he so sure this global village was inevitable?
McLuhan believed it was baked into how media evolves. Each new technology kind of picks up where the last one left off, extending our reach and shrinking the world just a little bit more each time. The printing press, that made information more accessible, right?
Right.
Then the telegraph, the telephone, they come along and boom, distance collapses because we have near instant communication.
And then the internet comes along and it does all of that.
Yeah.
But on a scale, I mean, even McLuhan probably couldn't have imagined.
Right.
It's like he was playing chess while everyone else was still playing checkers.
I like that analogy. And, it wasn't just about the speed of connection for McLuhan.
Okay.
He understood that this global village thing, it wasn't going to be some utopian paradise.
Right.
He knew there were going to be challenges.
Yeah.
Even dangers.
Which brings us to that famous phrase of his, "The medium is the message." I gotta admit, that one always felt a little cryptic to me.
Right.
Can you break it down? What did he really mean by that?
It's funny because it sounds so simple, right?
Yeah?
But then when you really start to think about it, you realize how deep it actually is.
Yeah.
McLuhan was saying that it's the form of a medium, so the technology itself that has a bigger impact on us than whatever content it actually carries.
So it's not just what we're consuming, it's how we're consuming it.
Bingo.
The actual way we take in information changes how we think.
You got it. Think about it.
Yeah.
How differently do you process information when you're scrolling through TikTok versus sitting down with a really good book?
Oh my gosh, tell me about it. My attention span, I swear, can barely make it through a whole paragraph these days.
Right.
It's like my brain is wired for these little short bursts of information now, and that's it.
And that is exactly the kind of shift McLuhan was talking about. He
Wow.
was already seeing it even back then with television in the 60s.
Hmm.
He contrasted this slow, immersive experience of going to the cinema
Yeah.
with the fast-paced, fragmented nature of TV.
Right.
He argued that this new medium, this new way of consuming information, was going to change how we process information, how we make sense of the world.
And now with the internet, with social media, it's like that fragmentation is happening at warp speed.
Totally.
It's constant, this bombardment of information, headlines, tweets, notifications. It's hard to even know what to focus on anymore. What even matters?
Exactly. And it all ties back to another one of McLuhan's insights, and I'm going to quote documenter.txt directly here. We shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us.
So we think we're in control.
We might think that, yes.
But it's the tools that we use that actually end up shaping our habits and even our thoughts.
It's this constant two-way street. We create these technologies, but then they turn right back around and shape us, how we experience the world, how we understand it. Think about how social media platforms are designed. All those algorithms, the infinite scroll, the notifications.
Right.
It's all geared to do one thing: capture your attention and then keep it for as long as possible.
And honestly, it's working. It's really hard to resist that pull, the constant need to scroll and see what's next.
Absolutely.
But where does that leave us? If we're being shaped by tools that are designed to keep us hooked, keep us scrolling, instead of helping us actually think critically about the world around us.
And that right there is where we start to see some of those potential dangers of this global village that McLuhan was talking about. He was really aware that any technology, especially one powerful enough to connect the entire world,
Yeah.
it could also be used to manipulate people, control them, even divide them.
And we're seeing that play out today in a lot of ways.
Sadly, yeah.
The spread of misinformation, filter bubbles that keep us from seeing other people's perspectives, the way tech can be used to exploit our anxieties, our insecurities. It's a lot. It's like he could see those potential downsides way back then.
He could, he did, and he spoke about them a lot. One of the things that worried him most was how this new global village, well, how it could actually devolve into, well, he called it a sort of digital tribalism.
Tribalism, what do you mean by that?
He was afraid that instead of bringing us all together like we might hope,
Right.
technology could actually be used to do the opposite, to divide us all into these smaller and smaller groups.
Oh, well.
Each one with its own little set of beliefs, its own values,
Right.
unable to talk to each other, unable to understand each other.
And it's a scary thought, especially when you look at how polarized things seem today.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's retreating into their own little echo chambers.
Right.
And finding common ground, having a real conversation.
Yeah.
Forget about it.
It's definitely a trend he was worried about.
Yeah.
And something we really need to be mindful of for sure. But, you know, it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay.
McLuhan also believed that we have the power to shape technology,
Okay.
that we can use it for good.
So what's the antidote? How do we avoid falling into those traps and actually use technology to create a better global village?
McLuhan really believed in education.
Yeah.
And not just like learning how to use the latest gadget, but really understanding how technology works, how it influences us, how we can use it consciously, critically.
So it's about becoming aware of those invisible forces that are shaping our thoughts, shaping our behavior. Right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, how do algorithms actually work? Why do I get sucked into scrolling for hours? That kind of thing.
Exactly. It's about developing what we might call media literacy.
Okay.
Being able to see those messages, the manipulations, and then making conscious choices about how we engage with it all.
So taking back our power,
Yes.
our agency in this digital world.
Yeah.
But where does art fit into all of this? We touched on that a bit earlier.
Yeah.
I'd love to dig a little deeper.
Sure.
Because McLuhan, he saw art as this powerful antidote, right?
He did.
To all the potentially numbing effects of technology.
It's like art can help us wake up a little bit.
Yeah.
To question things, you know, to connect with, well, with our humanity in a world that can feel so impersonal.
So it's not just about putting down our phones and picking up a paintbrush, though I'm sure that couldn't hurt either.
Uh-huh. Right?
It's really about bringing that same mindfulness to everything we do.
You got it. It's about being present, being aware, questioning things. And art, whether it's music, literature, visual art, whatever, it can help us do that.
Hmm.
It challenges how we see the world. It expands our perspective, reminds us what it means to be human.
And maybe that's what McLuhan was getting at with that famous quote, "In the age of information, the illiterate will not be the one who cannot read and write, but the one who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." It's not just about, like, having knowledge. It's
Right.
about being open to new ways of seeing and understanding things.
Hmm. It's about staying curious, adaptable, never losing that sense of wonder, because the world is changing faster than ever.
It really is.
And we've got to be ready to change with it.
Well, that is a thought-provoking note to end on. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into the work of Marshall McLuhan. From the global village to the idea that the medium is the message, his insights are, well, they're more relevant than ever, I think. So as we navigate this increasingly complex digital world, let's keep his words in mind, remember his warnings, and hold on to that enduring belief in our own power to shape our destiny. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.